The coffee shop on Maple Street had seen better days. Its worn leather booths and chipped ceramic mugs spoke of decades serving the working-class neighborhood, a place where construction workers grabbed morning coffee and nurses stopped by after double shifts. It was the last place anyone would expect to find Marcus Bennett, though nobody there knew who he really was. Marcus sat in the corner booth, wearing a faded flannel shirt he'd bought specifically for occasions like this. His watch, a modest Timex instead of his usual Patek Philippe, showed 7:03 p.m., 3 minutes late. He'd learned that arriving exactly on time seemed too eager, too polished. Real people, people who worked actual jobs and worried about rent, they ran a few minutes behind. This was his 9th blind date in 4 months, each one arranged through well-meaning friends who knew him as Mark, the guy who worked construction and drove a 15-year-old pickup truck. They didn't know about the Bennett Technologies empire, the Forbes profile, or the penthouse overlooking the city skyline. They couldn't know. Every woman who discovered his real identity had transformed before his eyes, their laughter becoming calculated, their questions probing for net worth rather than character. The door chimed. Marcus glanced up and felt his carefully practiced indifference falter. She wasn't what he expected. Most of his dates arrived in designer clothes, trying to look casual, their makeup perfect, their smiles bright and hungry. This woman wore nurse's scrubs decorated with cartoon characters, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had the kind of tired eyes that came from real exhaustion, not a long day at the spa. She scanned the coffee shop with the efficiency of someone who didn't have time to waste. "Mark?" she called out, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty. Marcus stood, nearly knocking over his coffee mug. "That's me. You must be Rachel." Rachel Morgan crossed to his booth with quick steps, sliding into the opposite seat. "I'm so sorry I'm late. My shift ran over, and then I had to pick up my daughter from my neighbor's place, and traffic was—" She stopped herself, laughing slightly. "Sorry, I'm rambling. It's been one of those days." "No problem at all," Marcus said, genuinely meaning it. "Tough shift." "Pediatric ICU," Rachel explained, waving down the waitress. "We had a little boy come in this morning, car accident. He's stable now, thank God, but—" She trailed off, and Marcus saw the weight of the day in her shoulders. "Anyway, coffee. I need coffee." The waitress, a woman named Dolores who'd served Marcus on previous dates at this location, brought over a pot. "The usual, honey?" she asked Rachel with obvious familiarity. "You're a lifesaver, Dolores." Rachel wrapped her hands around the mug like it was a life preserver. "So, Mark, construction, right? That's what Jennifer told me." Marcus nodded, sticking to his script. "Framing, mostly. Residential buildings. It's good work." "Hard work," Rachel corrected, noticing his hands. They were too smooth, he realized suddenly. He'd forgotten to rough them up this time. "My dad was a carpenter. I remember how his hands always looked like he'd been in a fight with sandpaper and lost." "Office days are easier on the hands," Marcus improvised quickly. "I'm actually doing more project management lately. Less time with the tools, more time with the paperwork." Rachel studied him for a moment, and Marcus felt an uncomfortable flutter in his chest. Her gaze was direct, assessing, but not in the calculating way he'd grown accustomed to. She was simply trying to figure out if he was worth her extremely limited time. "Can I be honest?" Rachel asked suddenly. "Please." "I almost cancelled tonight. My daughter Sophie, she's 5, she had a rough day at kindergarten. Some kids were teasing her about not having a dad around, and she came home crying. I spent an hour just holding her, and then my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, she insisted I keep this date. Said I needed to remember I'm a person too, not just Sophie's mom." Rachel paused, taking a long sip of coffee. "But I'm going to be straight with you. I don't have time for games. I work 50-hour weeks, I'm raising a little girl on my own, and I'm drowning in student loans from nursing school. If you're looking for something casual or fun, I'm not your person." The speech should have sent Marcus running. It was the opposite of the carefree, available women he usually encountered. Instead, he found himself leaning forward, genuinely interested for the first time in months. "I appreciate the honesty," he said. "And for what it's worth, I'm not looking for casual either." "Really?" Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Because Jennifer mentioned you've been on a few dates recently. She seemed to think you were quite the eligible bachelor in the neighborhood." Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. His friend Jennifer, who ran the community center and had set up several of these dates, might have oversold his desirability. I've been looking for something real. It's been harder than I expected. Join the club, Rachel said with a wry smile. Every guy I've met in the past year either runs when they hear I have a kid, or they stick around for exactly 2 dates before ghosting. One guy actually told me I had too much baggage for him to deal with. Then he was an idiot. The words came out more forcefully than Marcus intended, but Rachel's smile widened into something genuine and warm. You haven't met my baggage yet, she joked. Sophie's amazing, but she's also 5, which means she has opinions about everything from what color socks I wear to whether the moon is made of cheese. Spoiler alert, she's convinced it's mozzarella. Marcus laughed, a real laugh that surprised him. Smart kid. Mozzarella is the most logical cheese for moon construction. They talked for 2 hours. Rachel told him about Sophie's obsession with butterflies, about the hospital where she worked, about her dreams of eventually becoming a nurse practitioner. Marcus, sticking to his construction worker persona, invented details about job sites and difficult contractors, hating each lie but unable to stop himself. The truth, that he owned a tech company worth billions, that his project management involved international deals and board meetings, felt impossible to confess now. I should get going, Rachel said finally, glancing at her phone. Mrs. Chen is wonderful, but she's 73 and probably ready for bed. Of course. Marcus stood with her, pulling out his wallet to pay for their coffee. Rachel was faster, slapping a $10 bill on the table. We split it, she said firmly. I don't need anyone paying my way. It was such a small amount of money, Marcus probably spent more on a single cup of coffee at his office, but her pride was evident. He nodded, adding his own 10 to the table. Outside the coffee shop, the evening air was cool. Rachel pulled a worn cardigan tighter around her shoulders. I had a really nice time, she said, and Marcus could tell she meant it. Would you want to do this again? Maybe meet Sophie? I know that's fast, but I don't have the luxury of dating for months before introducing someone to my daughter. If this is going anywhere, she needs to be part of the equation. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to tell her the truth right now, before this went any further. But looking at Rachel's hopeful, tired, genuine face, he couldn't bring himself to risk the transformation he'd seen so many times before. I'd love to meet Sophie, he heard himself say. Rachel's smile could have powered the entire city. Saturday afternoon, there's a free butterfly exhibit at the Natural History Museum. Sophie's been begging to go, but I've been working every weekend. I managed to get this Saturday off. The Natural History Museum, Marcus repeated slowly. The Natural History Museum where the Bennett Wing had just opened, funded by a $50 million donation from his company. Where his photograph hung in the main entrance hall, next to a plaque thanking the generous support of Marcus Bennett and Bennett Technologies. That's perfect, he managed to say, his mind already racing through how he could possibly pull this off. Marcus spent the next 3 days in a state of controlled panic that his executive team found both baffling and amusing. Let me get this straight, his chief operating officer David Park said during their Thursday meeting. You want us to remove your photograph from the museum entrance. Temporarily relocate it, Marcus corrected, pacing his corner office. Just for Saturday afternoon. And the plaques, all of them in the Bennett Wing. The wing that's literally named after you. Can we temporarily cover the signage? David stared at him like he'd suggested selling the company for $1. Marcus, what is going on? You've been distracted all week. Yesterday you approved a budget proposal you'd already rejected twice, and this morning you called our Singapore partners at 3 a.m. their time because you forgot about time zones. Marcus sank into his leather chair, rubbing his temples. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath him, a kingdom he'd built from a college dorm room and a good idea. Everything he'd achieved, every success, every billion in the bank suddenly felt like an obstacle rather than an accomplishment. I met someone, he admitted finally. David's eyebrows shot up. The construction worker thing again? She's a nurse, single mother. She works at City General, raises her daughter alone, and she's the most real person I've talked to in years. Marcus pulled up Rachel's photo from her social media profile, limited and carefully private, mostly pictures of a little girl with pigtails holding butterflies and flowers. She thinks I'm a construction project manager named Mark, who drives an old truck. Oh boy, David muttered. Marcus, you can't keep doing this. Eventually, I know, Marcus stood again, unable to sit still. I know it's insane. I know I should have told her the truth immediately. But David, you should have seen her face when she talked about her ex, about the guys who've dated her just to leverage connections or who disappeared when they realized she had a kid. She's been through enough. So your solution is to lie to her. The words hit harder than Marcus expected. He turned away from David's knowing look, staring out at the cityscape. I just need time. Time to show her I'm interested in her, not just playing some game. Once she knows me, the real me, not the bank account, then I'll tell her everything. And you think she'll be fine with the deception? Marcus didn't answer because he didn't have a good one. By Friday evening, he'd arranged everything. The museum director, an old college friend named Patricia Holmes, had been surprisingly understanding after Marcus explained the situation, or at least a version of it that made him sound less insane. You're lucky the Bennett wing is set up modularly, Patricia told him over the phone. We can rotate those panels overnight. Your photo will be in storage for the weekend. But Marcus, this is absolutely the last time I'm doing something like this. If you want to date someone while pretending to be poor, might I suggest not taking them to buildings you donated? Point taken, Marcus said. I owe you one. You owe me several, and I expect a very generous donation to our education programs as payment for this absurdity. Saturday morning arrived with the weight of impending disaster. Marcus dressed carefully, jeans from a regular department store, a simple button-down shirt, work boots that he'd actually scuffed up this time. He left his penthouse in the service elevator, walked 2 blocks to the garage where he kept the pickup truck, and drove to the museum like a man heading to his own execution. Rachel and Sophie were waiting at the entrance. The little girl wore a purple dress, covered in butterfly prints and light-up sneakers that blinked with every step. Her hair was pulled into 2 ponytails tied with ribbons, and she clutched a small stuffed butterfly toy. "Mark!" Rachel waved, and Marcus felt his stomach twist with guilt at the fake name. "Hi," he managed, walking over. He crouched down to Sophie's level. "You must be Sophie. Your mum told me you're a butterfly expert." Sophie regarded him with the solemn suspicion of a 5-year-old meeting a stranger. "Are you my mummy's friend?" "I hope so," Marcus said honestly. "Do you like butterflies?" "I do now." That earned him a small smile. Sophie looked up at her mother. "He's okay, I guess." Rachel laughed, the sound easing some of Marcus's tension. High praise from the tough critic. "Should we head inside?" The museum was crowded with families, the weekend rush in full swing. Marcus had visited dozens of times for board meetings and donation events, always through private entrances with champagne and catered hors d'oeuvres. Seeing it through the main entrance, standing in line with regular people, felt oddly intimate. He kept waiting for someone to recognize him. A security guard, a staff member, anyone who'd seen his photo in the business section or at fundraising galas. But people just moved past him, focused on their own families and exhibits. "Tickets are on me," Rachel said, pulling out her wallet at the admission desk. "Rachel, no. You bought coffee last time. My turn." She was already handing over her credit card before Marcus could argue. He watched the transaction with discomfort, knowing that the admission fees for all 3 of them cost about what he usually spent on lunch. Sophie grabbed his hand with sticky fingers as they entered, her earlier suspicion forgotten in her excitement. "The butterflies are this way. I saw pictures online." She dragged him through the main hall, Rachel following with an amused smile. Marcus barely had time to note with relief that the photograph rotation had worked. His face was nowhere in sight, replaced by a generic museum banner. The butterfly exhibit was spectacular, a climate-controlled conservatory filled with hundreds of species. Sophie's eyes went wide as a blue morpho landed on her shoulder. Mom, look!" She stood perfectly still, afraid to breathe. Rachel had her phone out instantly, snapping photos. "You're a butterfly perch, baby." Marcus watched them, something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Rachel's joy in her daughter's happiness was pure and uncomplicated. There was no performance here, no angle, no attempt to impress anyone, just a mother and daughter having a simple, perfect day. "Look at that one," Sophie pointed to a monarch butterfly feeding on flowers. "They migrate thousands of miles, you know. All the way to Mexico." "How did you get so smart?" Marcus asked. "Books," Sophie said matter-of-factly, "and Miss Peterson at school. She knows everything about insects." They spent 2 hours in the exhibit, Sophie narrating facts about every species they encountered. Rachel took what must have been 100 photos, her face glowing with happiness. Marcus found himself relaxing, almost forgetting the elaborate deception that made this moment possible, until they left the butterfly exhibit and Sophie spotted the gift shop. "Mom, can we look, please?" Rachel hesitated, and Marcus saw the calculation cross her face. Budget versus daughter's happiness, the eternal parental math problem. "Just looking, Soph. We can't buy anything today." The gift shop was full of butterfly merchandise, plush toys, books, educational kits. Sophie gravitated immediately to a butterfly growing kit, complete with caterpillars and everything needed to watch them transform into butterflies. "This is so cool," she breathed, holding the box like treasure. Then she carefully read the price tag and put it back on the shelf without being asked. Marcus felt something break inside him. The kit cost $45. Pocket change, literally nothing to him. He could buy every item in this shop without blinking. But Rachel had said they couldn't afford it, and Sophie, at 5 years old, understood and accepted that without complaint. "Sophie," he said gently, "what if I got that for you, as a gift for being such a great butterfly tour guide today?" Sophie's face lit up, but Rachel stepped in immediately. "Mark, that's really sweet, but we can't accept." "Please," Marcus said, meeting her eyes. "It's just a gift, nothing more." Rachel looked torn, pride warring with her daughter's hopeful expression. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay. But Sophie, what do you say?" "Thank you." Sophie hugged the kit to her chest, beaming. Marcus paid for the kit, and they walked outside into the afternoon sunshine. Sophie chattered about the butterflies the whole way to Rachel's car, a Honda Civic with a dented bumper and a child seat in the back. "Thank you for today," Rachel said softly, while Sophie climbed into her car seat. "Really? She hasn't been this happy in weeks." "Neither have I," Marcus admitted, and it was the most honest thing he'd said all day. Rachel smiled, stepping closer. For a moment, Marcus thought she might kiss him, and he desperately wanted her to, while simultaneously dreading it, because it would all be based on a lie. Instead, she squeezed his hand. "Same time next week? Maybe just the two of us?" Mrs. Chen offered to watch Sophie, and there's a nice restaurant downtown I've been wanting to try. Nothing fancy, just good food. "I'd love that," Marcus said, even as his mind catalogued all the ways a restaurant date could expose him. As Rachel's car pulled away, Sophie waving enthusiastically from the back window, Marcus stood in the parking lot, feeling like two different people were fighting for control of his life, and he had no idea which one deserved to win. The restaurant Rachel chose was a small Italian place called Angelo's, tucked into a neighborhood Marcus had never visited, despite living in the city his entire life. It was the kind of establishment with checkered tablecloths, Chianti bottles used as candle holders, and a menu handwritten on a chalkboard. The smells of garlic and fresh bread filled the air, and every table seemed occupied by families who'd been coming here for generations. Marcus arrived first, his anxiety reaching new heights. He'd spent the past week deflecting calls from his attorney about a merger, missing 2 board meetings, and generally behaving like someone having a sustained mental breakdown. His assistant, Karen, had actually asked if he needed to see a doctor. "I'm fine," he'd insisted, "just dealing with some personal matters." Personal matters don't usually involve researching middle-income neighborhoods and reading articles about single-parent dating, Karen had replied, gesturing to his browser history that she'd accidentally seen. "But okay, boss. Whatever you say." Now, sitting at Angelo's waiting for Rachel, Marcus wondered if Karen had been right. Maybe he did need professional help. Normal people didn't construct elaborate lies to date someone. Normal people didn't buy burner phones to avoid their real contacts. Normal people didn't have their COO cover for them at charity galas, where they were supposed to give speeches. The door opened, and Rachel walked in, wearing a simple navy dress that probably cost $50, but looked perfect on her. Her hair was down for the first time since he'd met her, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She spotted him and smiled, and Marcus felt his doubts evaporate like morning fog. "Hi," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Sorry, I know I'm a few minutes late. Sophie decided she absolutely needed to give me a makeover before I left, which involved a lot of lip gloss and her opinions on my eyeshadow choices." "You look beautiful," Marcus said, meaning it completely. Rachel blushed slightly. "Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself, construction guy." They ordered pasta for Rachel, chicken parmesan for Marcus, and fell into easy conversation. Rachel told him about Sophie's butterfly caterpillars, which had arrived in the mail and were already growing at an alarming rate. She described work, the difficult cases, the small victories that made the long shifts worthwhile. "What about you?" she asked, twirling pasta on her fork. "Tell me about your family, your work. I feel like I've been monopolizing all our conversations with Sophie stories." Marcus had prepared for this, rehearsed his constructed backstory. Parents who'd passed away, true. No siblings, also true. Working his way up in construction, complete fiction. But sitting across from Rachel, seeing the genuine interest in her eyes, the lies felt heavier than ever. "My parents died when I was in college," he said, sticking to the truth where he could. "Car accident. After that I threw myself into work, built up my career, focused on success." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Maybe too focused. "I look around sometimes and realize I've built this life that looks good on paper, but feels empty." "I get that," Rachel said softly. "After Sophie's dad left, she was only 6 months old, I felt like I had to be everything. Perfect mom, perfect nurse, perfect at keeping it all together. It took me a long time to realize that being perfect wasn't the same as being happy." "What changed?" "Sophie did. One day she asked me why I never smiled anymore. She was 3 years old, and she noticed something I'd been trying to hide from everyone." Rachel's eyes glistened slightly. "That was my wake-up call. I started letting things be messy, started accepting help from neighbors, started remembering that I'm allowed to want things for myself too." "Like what?" Marcus leaned forward, genuinely curious. "Small things mostly. Coffee with friends, a night out occasionally. Maybe going back to school eventually for my nurse practitioner degree, though that feels impossible with the costs." She laughed self-consciously. "I know it's not exciting compared to most people's dreams." "It's real," Marcus said. "That makes it more valuable than most dreams." They talked through dinner, through dessert, through 2 cups of coffee each. The restaurant began to empty around them, other diners finishing their meals and heading home. Angelo himself, an elderly man with a thick Italian accent, came by to personally box up their leftovers. "You two are good together," he said, with a knowing smile. "I can always tell. 43 years I've been watching couples in this restaurant, and you got that look." "What look?" Rachel asked, amused. "The look that says you forget anyone else exists when you talk to each other." Angelo winked at Marcus. "You hold on to this one, young man. She's special." "I know she is," Marcus said quietly. Outside the restaurant, the evening had turned cool. Rachel shivered slightly, and Marcus instinctively offered his jacket, a simple denim jacket, nothing like the $1,000 coats in his actual wardrobe. "Thanks," she said, pulling it around her shoulders. "So I have a confession to make." Marcus's heart stopped. Had she figured it out? Had someone recognized him and told her? "I Googled you," Rachel continued, looking embarrassed. I know, it's weird, but Jennifer kept saying what a great guy you were, and I wanted to make sure you weren't a serial killer or something before I introduced you to Sophie." "And?" Marcus managed to ask, his mouth dry. "And there's like nothing. A few social media profiles that might be you, but they're all pretty bare. No digital footprint at all, really," she laughed, which is actually kind of refreshing. "Everyone else I've met is all over social media, posting every meal and thought. You're like a mystery man." Marcus forced a laugh that sounded hollow to his own ears. "I'm just private. Never got into the whole social media thing." "I respect that. Sophie's all over my Facebook. I'm definitely one of those mums, but I can see the appeal of keeping things offline." Rachel checked her phone. "I should get going soon, Mrs. Chen's probably watching late-night game shows with Sophie and teaching her to count cards or something." They walked to her car, neither of them quite ready for the evening to end. Rachel leaned against the driver's door, looking up at him. "I really like you, Mark," she said. "That probably sounds too forward, too fast, but I don't have time to play games. Sophie adores you. She's been talking about you all week. And She paused, seeming to gather courage. "I haven't felt this way about anyone since before she was born." Marcus felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. This was the moment. He should tell her everything right now, before this went any further, before the lie became too big to fix. "Rachel, I need to tell you something." His phone rang. Not the burner phone he carried for these dates, but his real phone, buried in his truck's glove compartment. He'd forgotten to turn it off, and the ringtone, distinctive, impossible to ignore, echoed through the quiet street. "You should get that," Rachel said. "Might be important." Marcus wanted to ignore it, but the ringtone meant emergency protocol. Only 3 people had that number: David, Karen, and his lawyer. They only used it for absolute crises. "I'm so sorry," he said, jogging to his truck. "Just 1 second." It was David, and he sounded panicked. "Marcus, thank God. We have a situation. The Singapore deal is falling apart. They're threatening to walk unless you're on a video call in the next hour. And there's a reporter from TechWire at the office asking questions about your whereabouts. She seems to know about the dates, Marcus. Someone talked." Marcus's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, someone talked?" "I don't know yet, but she's asking specific questions about you pretending to be a construction worker. She's connected some dots. If she publishes this story..." David didn't need to finish the sentence. Marcus looked back at Rachel, who was checking her phone, giving him privacy. She trusted him. Sophie trusted him. And he was about to lose them both because he'd been too cowardly to tell the truth from the beginning. "I'll handle Singapore remotely," Marcus said quietly. "And David, prepare a statement. I'm telling Rachel everything tonight." "Are you sure that's..." "I should have told her from the start. This is my mess to clean up." He ended the call and walked back to Rachel, every step feeling like wading through concrete. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Rachel, that thing I needed to tell you." Marcus took a deep breath. "Can we go somewhere private? There's something important you need to know about me, and I need to tell you before someone else does." Rachel's expression shifted from concern to worry. "Mark, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" "I'm not who you think I am," Marcus said, the words finally breaking free. "My name isn't Mark. It's Marcus. Marcus Bennett. And I'm not a construction project manager." Rachel stared at him, confusion clouding her features. "I don't understand. If you're not..." "I'm the CEO of Bennett Technologies. I have a penthouse downtown. I donated the wing to the museum where we took Sophie." The words tumbled out faster now, desperate. "I've been lying to you since we met because every woman I've dated after they learned who I really was, they changed. They stopped being real, and you were so genuine, so honest, and I just wanted someone to see me, not my bank account." The color drained from Rachel's face. She took a step back, and Marcus saw the moment everything broke between them. "You've been lying to me this entire time?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "About your name? Your job? Everything?" "Not everything. My feelings for you are real. What we had tonight, that was all real. How dare you?" Rachel's voice turned sharp, angry tears springing to her eyes. "I told you I didn't have time for games. I introduced you to my daughter. Sophie made you a drawing at school this week because she thought you were special. And you've been playing pretend this whole time? Rachel, please, I trusted you." She was crying now, fumbling for her car keys. "I actually thought... God, I'm so stupid. You probably think this is hilarious. Poor single mum nurse falls for the billionaire playing dress-up. It's not like that at all. Rachel, if you'd just let me explain..." "Explain what?" "That you're a liar. I already figured that part out." She yanked open her car door. "Stay away from me. Stay away from Sophie. I mean it, Marcus. We're not some experiment for you to feel normal." "Rachel..." But she was already in her car, engine starting. Marcus watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the night, and felt like his entire world was collapsing around him. His phone rang again. David, probably with more disasters to manage. But Marcus just stood there in the empty parking lot, finally understanding that all the money in the world couldn't fix what he'd just destroyed. Marcus spent 3 days in a fog that alarmed everyone around him. He stopped showing up to the office entirely, communicating only through terse emails that handled the bare minimum of business. The Singapore deal collapsed, a $50 million loss that he barely registered. David tried calling 17 times before giving up and handling the fallout himself. The penthouse felt like a museum, all expensive furniture and empty space. Marcus found himself driving past Rachel's neighborhood in the old pickup truck, never stopping, just circling like a ghost, haunting his own mistakes. He saw her once, leaving for work in her scrubs, and the exhaustion in her shoulders made his chest ache. On the 4th day, Patricia Holmes from the museum called. "Marcus, what on earth did you do?" she demanded without preamble. "I just had a very angry nurse show up demanding to know why there's a Bennett wing. when you told her your name was Mark and you worked construction. Marcus sat up from where he'd been lying on his couch, staring at the ceiling. Rachel came to the museum? With her daughter. The little girl wanted to see the butterflies again. Rachel saw your photograph, the one we rotated back into place, and apparently put two and two together. Patricia's voice softened slightly. She was crying, Marcus. That beautiful little girl kept asking why her mommy was sad. The image hit Marcus like a physical blow. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're a generous donor who made the butterfly exhibit possible. That you've funded children's education programs across the city. That you're actually one of the good ones, despite being an absolute idiot about dating. Patricia sighed. She didn't want to hear it. But Marcus, she asked questions. About your charitable work, about the hospital wing you funded at City General. I funded a wing at her hospital? 3 years ago, the pediatric ICU where she works. Your donation upgraded their equipment, hired additional staff, saved countless children's lives, including apparently a little boy who came in last week from a car accident. Marcus remembered Rachel mentioning that case on their first date, the boy who'd stabilized, who'd survived. Survived in a facility that his money had improved, equipment his donation had purchased. She doesn't know that part, Patricia continued. I didn't tell her because I figured you should, if you're brave enough. After hanging up, Marcus sat with this information for a long time. Then he called David. I need you to arrange something, Marcus said, and I need your honest opinion on whether I'm being a stalker or genuinely trying to make amends. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive with you lately, David replied dryly. What's the plan? Marcus told him. David was silent for a long moment. That's either the most romantic gesture I've ever heard or a restraining order waiting to happen, David finally said. But for what it's worth, I think you should try. You've been miserable, and I've never seen you care about anything the way you care about her. The setup took 2 days. Marcus called in every favor he had, moved mountains and spent money in ways that felt purposeful for the first time in years. And then, on Saturday morning, he drove to Rachel's neighborhood and knocked on her door. She answered in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun. When she saw him, her expression turned icy. I asked you to stay away. I know, and after today, if you still want me gone, I'll disappear completely. Marcus held up his hands, showing he wasn't carrying anything threatening. I just need 30 minutes, please. Sophie's inside. I know. That's why I brought this. He gestured to his truck, where the back was loaded with 3 large boxes. The caterpillars should be turning into butterflies soon. I thought Sophie might like to release them somewhere special. Rachel's jaw tightened. You can't just buy your way into our lives. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to apologize properly. To both of you. Marcus met her eyes. 30 minutes, Rachel. Then I'm gone if that's what you want. Rachel looked back into her house where Marcus could hear children's cartoons playing. Finally, she sighed. Fine, 30 minutes, but if Sophie gets upset, you leave immediately. Agreed. Sophie appeared at the door, clutching her stuffed butterfly. Her eyes widened when she saw Marcus. Mommy, is that Mark? His real name is Marcus, baby, Rachel said gently. And he has something to tell us. They sat in Rachel's small living room, Sophie between them on the couch. The apartment was modest but warm, filled with Sophie's artwork and photographs. Marcus noticed a picture of Rachel in her nursing school graduation gown, beaming with pride, a baby Sophie in her arms. Sophie, Marcus began, his throat tight, I need to apologize to you. I told your mom my name was Mark, but my real name is Marcus. I wasn't honest and that was wrong. I'm very sorry. Sophie frowned, processing this. Why did you lie? Because I was scared, Marcus admitted. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they're afraid. That doesn't make it okay, but that's the truth. Were you scared of us? The question hit hard. No, sweetheart. I was scared you'd stop liking me if you knew something about me. Sophie considered this with 5-year-old seriousness. My friend Mia's dad lied about eating all the cookies once. He got in big trouble. I bet he did. Lying usually gets us in trouble, doesn't it? Uh-huh. Sophie looked at her mother. Is Marcus in big trouble? Yes, Rachel said firmly. Very big trouble. Okay. Sophie seemed satisfied with this answer. Can we still let the butterflies go? Marcus glanced at Rachel, who gave a small nod. Actually, I found a really special place for that. if your mom says it's okay. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to City General Hospital. Rachel's confusion turned to shock as Marcus led them not to the main entrance, but to a side door marked Pediatric ICU Staff Only. Marcus, what? The door opened, revealing Patricia Holmes and 3 hospital administrators. Behind them, through large windows, was a newly constructed rooftop garden filled with flowers, butterfly bushes and small trees. Children in hospital gowns were already there with their families, some in wheelchairs, some with IV poles, all of them pointing excitedly at the space. "What is this?" Rachel whispered. One of the administrators, a woman named Dr. Chen, stepped forward. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Bennett approached us earlier this week with a proposal. He wanted to create a butterfly garden specifically for our pediatric patients, a place where they could experience nature during their recovery. He expedited construction, personally oversaw the design, and ensured every plant was safe for children with various medical conditions." Marcus watched Rachel's face cycle through emotions: confusion, realization, wonder. Sophie was already pulling toward the garden, eager to see. "The butterflies from Sophie's kit," Marcus said quietly. "I thought they deserved somewhere meaningful to start their lives, somewhere that could bring joy to other kids who need it." Dr. Chen smiled. "Mr. Bennett also didn't tell you that he's responsible for most of the equipment in our PICU. The ventilator that saved that little boy from the car accident last week. That was from the Bennett Foundation, as were the monitors, the ultrasound machines, and the funding for 2 additional nursing positions, one of which might be yours soon if you're interested in that nurse practitioner program." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "What? The hospital will cover your tuition," Dr. Chen continued. "Mr. Bennett established a scholarship fund for our staff members pursuing advanced degrees. You were already on our list of candidates before he ever met you. Your supervisors have been recommending you for months." "I didn't know that," Marcus said quickly. "I swear, Rachel, I only learned about it yesterday when I was researching the hospital. This was all in motion before we met." Sophie tugged on Marcus's hand. "Can we let the butterflies go now?" The garden was everything Marcus had envisioned, a small paradise 30 stories above the city streets. Children gasped as Sophie carefully opened the habitat container, and newly formed butterflies emerged, their wings still drying in the sunlight. They fluttered among the specially chosen flowers, landing on outstretched fingers and bringing squeals of delight. Marcus hung back, letting Rachel and Sophie have this moment. But then he felt a small hand slip into his. Sophie, eyes tracking a monarch butterfly, squeezed his fingers. "This is the best place ever," she said seriously. "Thank you, Marcus." His throat closed up. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Rachel was crying openly now, watching her daughter laugh with other children as butterflies danced around them. She walked over to Marcus, her expression complex, still hurt, still angry, but something else too. "You can't fix lies with grand gestures," she said. "I know. You should have told me the truth from the beginning. I know that too. But this," she gestured at the garden, at the children, at Sophie releasing butterflies with a little boy in a wheelchair. "This isn't about us, is it? This is just who you are." Marcus shook his head. "I've been writing checks for years, Rachel, putting my name on buildings and going to galas and telling myself I was making a difference. But I was disconnected from it all. Meeting Sophie, you reminded me why any of it matters. These kids, your work, the real impact, I'd forgotten to see it." They stood in silence, watching butterflies spiral upward into the clear sky. "I told my neighbor Mrs. Chen about you," Rachel finally said. "About what happened, want to know what she told me." "What?" "She said her husband lied to her on their first date. Told her he was a struggling artist when he actually came from money. She was furious when she found out." Rachel smiled slightly. "They were married for 47 years before he passed. She said the lie was wrong, but his fear was human, and that I should ask myself if I was angrier about the deception or about having my walls breached by someone who actually saw me." Marcus's heart hammered. "And what did you decide?" "I'm still angry," Rachel said honestly. "What you did was wrong, Marcus. You made me doubt my judgment. You made me feel foolish. I know. I'm so sorry. But I also understand why you did it. And I've been thinking about something you said at the restaurant, about building a life that looks good on paper, but feels empty." She turned to face him fully. I think maybe we're both scared of letting people see who we really are. I hide behind being strong and independent because I'm terrified of being vulnerable again. You hide behind a fake name because you're terrified people only want your money. So where does that leave us? Rachel was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophie chase butterflies. I think it leaves us with a choice. We can let fear win, protect ourselves, stay safe. Or we can be brave enough to try again, honestly this time. I want to try, Marcus said immediately. I want to know everything about you, your real dreams, not just the small ones you think are safe to share. I want Sophie to teach me about butterflies and mozzarella moons. I want to show up as myself, Marcus Bennett, with all the complications that brings. Even if I'm intimidated by your world, even if I feel out of place at fancy events, even if I need you to be patient while I learn to trust you again. Especially then. Sophie ran up to them, breathless with excitement. Mommy, Marcus, did you see? The butterflies are staying in the garden. Dr. Chen says they're going to have babies here and everything. Rachel laughed, wiping her eyes. I saw, baby. It's beautiful. Can Marcus come to dinner at our house tonight? Sophie asked. Please, I want to show him my butterfly book collection. Rachel looked at Marcus, a challenge and an invitation in her eyes. Can you handle macaroni and cheese and a 5-year-old's butterfly lectures? It sounds perfect, Marcus said, and meant it completely. 6 months later, Marcus stood in that same rooftop garden, though now it was transformed with white chairs and flowers for a small gathering. Sophie, in a purple flower girl dress that matched the butterflies she loved, held the rings with solemn importance. Do you promise to always tell the truth? She'd asked Marcus earlier while they practiced. Even when it's scary? I promise, he'd said, always. Rachel walked toward him now wearing a simple white dress, her smile radiant. Behind them, the city spread out in all directions. His city, but different now, better. Real. Ready, she whispered when she reached him. I've been ready since the coffee shop on Maple Street, Marcus replied. And as they exchanged vows surrounded by butterflies and the children whose lives the garden touched, Marcus realized that the truth wasn't what he'd feared losing. The truth, messy, complicated, and perfectly imperfect, was what had finally set him free.